Well, hello, all you beautiful, beautiful people. Welcome back to Musey's Modern Dreadfuls. And kick back, relax, get comfy as I bring you another wicked little tale. This one is called Flayed. Before you read this, I feel like I should let you know some things. I'm not a bad woman. I don't usually get close to people, but when I fall in love, I love with my entire soul. That very soul got poisoned against me, leading me to a horrendous situation that will haunt me for the rest of my life. His name was Jacob Femme. All emotional self-preservation went out the window the second I first saw him. A hulking man, well over 6 feet tall. He had hair the color of fire with a beard to match. His eyes looked like a stormy gray. I still shiver with lust to think about it, even after all that's happened. I knew nothing about him other than I loved the way he walked, loved the way he talked, loved the way he existed. He could see my puppy dog eyes from a mile away and made sure to take full advantage. Jake made a point to ignore me at first, knowing I'd come to him, which, of course, I did. It wasn't my nature to be trusting, but soon I found myself mentally attaching his last name to my first. My brain combined traits that I'd like our children to have. My plan at the time was to stay single and just focus on finding myself. I needed to fall in love with my own soul before I could expect to mate with anyone else's. Nevertheless, he wriggled his way right into my heart, bed, and bank account. 6 months. It only took 6 months before I woke up one morning to a half-emptied closet. There was no note, no warning, nothing to even make me think he was unhappy. One devastating cure for sanity is a broken heart. A call to his phone told me that he had changed his number. My body trembled with mournful adrenaline. I desperately needed to perform CPR on my relationship. But with no corporeal form, it was impossible to do anything but cry as I wrung my hands. My stomach felt sick, like it was a week-old fryer grease with cigarette ash additives. All I needed was 10 minutes. If I could just talk to him just 10 minutes, this would all be okay. My mouth felt disgusting. There had been nothing to coat my dry throat but the salted snot of my own tears. Opening the fridge to grab a Coke, I'm disappointed to see that to add insult to injury, Jacob left with the last one. Part of me had started to wish that he choked on it. I throw on some sweatpants and get into my car. There's a corner store 5 miles from my house. If there's ever a time not to be out of drinks and cigarettes, it's now. The songs on the radio each stab my heart in different ways. Mental flashes of late-night kisses on my body and his lies of love played like warped music in my broken, haunted mind. The cashier was a sympathetic-looking teenage boy. I looked a mess, but wasn't the least bit concerned. Not when my life was falling apart. The card reader is ready for my payment, and I grab my wallet to pay. Fuck! Welp, not only did he empty half of my closet, but he helped himself to my wallet also. Thank God I had cash in my bra that day. My bank was contacted the second that I got back in my car. They were understanding, but not very helpful. It would take at least 5 business days for me to get a new card. The bank refused to give me a temporary card, even though I was issued one at the beginning of my account less than 10 months ago. I had no choice but to go down to the bank and withdraw the money in person. He'd gotten my checkbook too, so I'd need to close the account completely. I was too late. By the time I had become aware of the situation, Jake had already taken out $7,000. That pretty much devastated my entire savings account. Sure, I'd get the money back eventually, but what was I supposed to do until then? As I was leaving, the concerned teller placed her dainty hand over my own. Her glossed manicure sparkled in compassion to my bitten, chipped nails. She gave me a warm smile and told me to have a better day. After she removed her hand, a card laid atop mine. Cherie Jaloux, herbal healer and specialist. The card also had her phone number, address, and email written on it. No website, though. I looked into the teller's eyes questioningly. It was nice serving you today, Christina. I do hope you have a much better day. Her eyes widened for emphasis as she nodded her head towards the card. I clasped my fingers around the card and left the building. The address listed was on the far end of town that I wasn't very familiar with. Thankfully, I was off for the next 2 days. My car had a full tank of gas. There wasn't much else for me to do other than lose my mind at home, so I decided to check it out. Earlier, when I said her place was on the far end of town, it was an understatement. It seemed like I drove forever. By the time I had gotten there, I was completely unnerved. Her shop sat in the middle of nowhere. I use the word shop very loosely, by the way. It was no wonder I had never been out there before. There was nothing but cornfields and dust. A large woman with skin the color of old leather came to greet me at the door. Her eyes were warm, but her face looked drawn. It was like she had given out too many undeserving smiles. Each one took a little something away from her when it left her lips. She had a thick Creole accent. It made me wonder why she wasn't sitting in a bayou in Louisiana instead of a barren cornfield in Nebraska. She led me back behind a curtain to an area of the shop not meant for the casual customer. Cherie asked me to sit down and share my heartache, telling me a problem shared was a problem halved. I reluctantly joined her at the table and slowly told her everything about Jake, the lies, the money, my heart feeling like it was shredding from the inside out, etc. After I finished, she closed her eyes, a knowing smile forming on her face. She spoke loud and sternly. "Let me ask you something. Are you receptive to magic? I don't mean like Disneyland neither." I nod as she continues. "Do you have anything of his share? Maybe a shirt or a hairbrush? Something with the DNA?" It just so happened that I was wearing a hair tie that I had taken off his arm the night before while he slept. He had a habit of always putting them on his wrist after removing them from his hair before bedtime. In the mornings, his hands would always be all swollen and red from it. Unfortunately, I also had this very same habit. So I would literally take his hair tie off his wrist just to put it onto mine. Anyway, it had some of his hair on it. I take it off and hand it to her, inspecting it first to make sure none of my hair is also attached. Before fully releasing it into her hand, I ask her a question of my own. "Can you make the pain stop? I don't want to feel this way. I've worked very hard for all that I have, and he just took it for no reason. I don't understand. I wasn't perfect, but I tried to be the best that I could be." Cherie nodded her head and took my hands. I was then instructed to go outside and grab an ear of corn off of a random stalk. She yelled at me when I tried to ask her how this would be relevant or herbal in my healing. I tried to pick a stalk as ceremoniously as I could, despite the asinine situation I found myself in. Closing my eyes mockingly, I spun around with my arms out. It was almost like I was using myself as a divining rod. My arms took me to the field off to the left of the property. The corn was collected, so I went back inside, not knowing the horrors I had set into play. She told me to give a piece of his clothing. Staring down at my shirt, I made a risky decision. Raising my left arm above my head, I tore a piece of the fabric away with my teeth. I could mend the sleeve later if I wanted to. "This will have to be enough. I won't part with the whole thing. He wore this all day yesterday. Then I wore it to bed last night. Please, is there anything you can do to help me get my money back?" The scrap of cloth was wrapped around the cornstalk, secured with Jake's hair tie. I always told him to cut his fucking hair. If he'd listened to me, maybe this wouldn't be happening. Cherie placed her hands over the makeshift doll and closed her eyes. Her lips fluttered in a silent incantation. I couldn't help but interrupt her. Wait, what am I supposed to do with this? Boil butter and eat it? I don't understand. Her hand flew up to silence me. Rude. Cher, this here is called a juju. It will help you solve problems, bring you justice. Let him know that God don't like ugly. Take it home. Throw it in dark place to rot. As the outer layers fall away with time, so will your problem. So I did. And just as I'd hoped, the fraudulent report with the bank had come through. I had most of my $7,000 back just 2 days after seeing Miss Jaloux. 11 days after getting my money back, I received a text message with an address on it. Underneath the address were the words, "Help me." It wasn't too far from my house, so I booked it over there. Honestly, not even thinking to call the police to alert them of a potential dangerous situation. My mind raced as fast as my car did on the way over. The address took me to a similar stretch of road out by the woods. I could hear a man's screams before even shutting off my engine. My mind couldn't possibly prepare itself for what it was about to walk into. An ungodly wail just let up as I entered the house. I was selfishly relieved at this, even underneath all the terror. A back room revealed an agonized voice that I recognized. However, the person before me was not something I'd remembered seeing before. I'll never forget it now, though. Not in a million years. Jake's mutilated form lay writhing on the carpeted floor. The once plush white of it was now mostly marred with stiff red stains. There were towels next to him on his coffee table, but he couldn't lift his arms to reach them. His body was repulsive. Where his skin should have been was now covered with slick gleam of red. The muscles and tendons of his cheeks were exposed under deep sockets of his eyes. What once was a glorious member now took on the appearance of raw chorizo. The nose I had once cherished so much had caved in on itself, dangerously hindering his oxygen intake. Discarded layers of once healthy skin surrounded him on the floor, and more seemed to be sloughing off by the moment. His bared teeth gnashed a request at me. I could barely make it out. It sounded like, "Grab the iron?" An oozing finger pointed toward a cabinet above a washing machine. My stomach churned as the realization sunk in of what he wanted me to do. Shaking fingers clasped the cabinet handle as I opened the door. The longer I hesitated, the louder his renewed screams became. Not having much else choice, I grabbed the iron and plugged it in. With the advancements in beauty and technology, it was blistering hot within moments. Jake held out his arms and rammed his eyes shut. There was a somewhat clean towel that had managed to escape the gore next to him. I picked it up and placed it between his teeth as gently as I could. A part of me knew it wouldn't help him, but that part also knew it would help save my ears. The iron was firmly placed onto Jake's forearm. If his body was kind to him, he would only experience the pain for a few moments before losing consciousness. I could cover the rest of his arm while he's passed out from pain. That's only counting on him not going into shock. People say that burning flesh is one of the worst smells in the world. At first, I almost disagreed with them. The initial scent waves aren't that different from any other charred meat. But then the flame hits the body hair. Oh, fucking Christ. The hair mixed with the flesh is the worst smell ever. And the sound, a sinister sizzle, not much different from when you make your bacon in the morning. I was almost afraid to lift it away from his arm. At first glance, it worked. His forearm had stopped bleeding, and I had managed to seal some of the exposed areas of muscle and vein. Then, to my horror, that began to fall away too. The more I tried to cauterize him, the worse off he became. I finally collapsed in a defeated pile of tears next to his smoking, bloodied body. There was no way he could have been alive at this point. But he was. His chest shakily rose with each labored breath. His lungs exposed just under his pectoral muscles, contracting and releasing in a doomed dance. There was nothing I could do for him but call an ambulance, which I couldn't really do seeing as how my prints are all over the room and the iron, not to mention the blood surrounding the both of us at this point. My eyes burned, and I wasn't sure if it was salt from my sweat or his blood affecting them. He just kept breathing, kept screaming. There was no way I could transport him anywhere in one piece in his condition. I ashamedly ran to my car and left him there, too horrified and scared to act from a place of rationality. There was only one thing I could think to do, one thing to solve all this mess. I grabbed the corn cob from under my porch steps where I tossed them after Miss Jalou's house. The weather had been dry, thankfully, and I had a fresh pile of leaves that had been raked earlier. Retrieving the gas can I used for my lawnmower, I poured a thin stream on the leaves. They ignited the second that the match hit the pile. Jake's juju was thrown atop the blaze until it popped and bubbled into nothing but burnt kernels. There would be nothing left of Jake but ash by the time anyone found him. And hopefully, if physics work the way they are supposed to, the house will burn down with him. 」 And I hope you enjoyed today's extra long special. It is called Flayed, an exclusive from my friend BunnyB03 is her Reddit username, and she's fabulous. Go read her stuff, or just keep listening, because at this rate, she's gonna have a full-length novel, and she has my permission to publish it if she does, of me sharing these stories with you. I love her work, and I hope you do too. All right, my beautiful friends, I will talk at you soon. Have a great upcoming Valentine's Day. Remember not to fall for the Jakes in your life. All righty, talk to you soon. Bye.